Hey, what's up everyone? It's Tim from TimPlaysAGame. A few days ago I released a video about the upcoming Legend of Zelda game, Breath of the Wild for the Wii U, and its place on the Zelda timeline. Since then, I have taken time to talk to people and read your comments in the description of the previous video. I believe that I may have jumped to conclusions without enough evidence in my previous theory. Therefore, I have decided to revise my theory about Breath of the Wild's place on the Zelda timeline. If you haven't seen the first video about my theory, please click in the description below. Before we go any further into this video, be advised that the rest of this video contains massive spoilers about Zelda games, including Breath of the Wild. Stop this video now if you want to avoid any spoilers. Now, in my previous video, I stated that I believed Breath of the Wild took place after the events of Spirit Tracks on the Adult Link timeline. I base this theory mainly on the existence of the Koroks from the Wind Waker in Breath of the Wild. I also stated that the Koroks are descendants of the Kokiri and could not exist simultaneously. Many of you have sent me messages saying that just because the Koroks are descendants of the Kokiri from Ocarina of Time does not necessarily mean the Koroks evolved from the Kokiri, and it's possible, yet not very likely, that the Kokiri could have existed in the same time as the Koroks, even though the Deku Tree stated clearly that the Koroks used to have a human form. Another interesting fact about the Koroks that I realize is that they tend to be afraid of humans and will hide from them. This is interesting because one can say that the Koroks have always existed throughout the Zelda timeline, and that they have been hiding without being seen in any Zelda game, other than Wind Waker and Breath of the Wild. Because I can't refute either of these claims, for the remainder of this video I will not be basing any of my evidence on the Koroks or the Kokiri. With that in mind, let's start talk about the Breath of the Wild in relation to the singular timeline. The chronological first game in the singular timeline is Skyward Sword for the Wii. Before the events of this game, Ganon, Ganondorf, Hyrule, and the Master Sword did not exist. Because Breath of the Wild contains all four, Breath of the Wild could not have happened before the events of Skyward Sword. The chronological last game in the singular timeline is Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. An interesting fact about Ocarina of Time is that no one in Hyrule knew of Ganon or Ganondorf before the events of Ocarina of Time. This is supported by the fact that Ganondorf pledges his loyalty to the King of Hyrule, and only Zelda is suspicious of him. It is likely that Ocarina of Time is the first game in the Zelda timeline to have Ganon or Ganondorf. Because Breath of the Wild does make mention of Ganon, it is also likely Breath of the Wild could not have happened before the events of Ocarina of Time. Now let's talk about Breath of the Wild in relation to the events after Ocarina of Time on each of the three diverting timelines. First, on the Fallen Hero timeline, during the time between Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past, Ganondorf manages to defeat Link, enter the Sacred Realm, seize control of the Triforce, and get sealed into the Sacred Realm by sages. Because Ganon is still sealed in the Sacred Realm during A Link to the Past for the SNES, it is unlikely that he would have escaped and taken over Hyrule Castle as seen in Breath of the Wild. Second, on the Child Link timeline, during the time between Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess for the Wii, Ganondorf is imprisoned before he can carry out his plans to take the Triforce. Because Ganon is still imprisoned in Twilight Princess, he could not have taken over Hyrule Castle in the time between Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time. Third, on the Adult Link timeline, during the time between Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker, Ganondorf was sealed in the Sacred Realm only to have broken free, ultimately resulting in Hyrule being trapped under a great sea created by the gods prior to the beginning of Wind Waker. Because Hyrule Castle is not underwater in Breath of the Wild, it is impossible for Breath of the Wild to have occurred before the events of Wind Waker. Now that we have ruled out Breath of the Wild taking place anywhere in relation to the singular timeline, I want to talk about the relation to the Fallen Hero, Child Link, and Adult Link timelines. But first, let's talk about the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild. After spending a long time thinking about the existence of a Great Plateau in a Zelda game, I became aware that there are no Great Plateaus in any Legend of Zelda game. This is intriguing because something would have had to happen to create a Great Plateau. Furthermore, a plateau like the one seen in Breath of the Wild would have had to take hundreds, maybe even thousands of years to create, while still being able to sustain life. Also, we see no mention of the Guardians or the Sheikah Slate in any other Zelda game. These are two advanced pieces of technology which we have not seen anything like in any Zelda title. Because of the games in these three timelines only having about 100 years between them, it is very unlikely that Breath of the Wild could have occurred between the events of any two games in either of the three timelines. This leaves only three possibilities for the placement of Breath of the Wild on the Zelda timeline. Breath of the Wild takes place after the events of 1. Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link for the NES on the Fallen Hero timeline, 2. Four Swords Adventures for the GameCube on the Child Link timeline, or 3. Spirit Tracks for the DS on the Adult Link timeline. Now, let's revisit the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild. A plateau is defined as a land area having a relatively level surface with a considerable amount of elevation, and plateaus are generally formed by either volcanic eruptions, extrusions of lava, or erosion by glaciers and water. So the question now is, what caused the Great Plateau to form? I can see only one of two possibilities. Either A, the Great Ocean from Wind Waker receding, or B, Calamity Ganon. Don't forget, Ganon is referred to as Calamity Ganon. By definition, a calamity is a great misfortune or disaster, such as a flood or serious injury. It is possible that Ganon could have wreaked so much havoc on Hyrule that it tore the land severely enough to produce a Great Plateau. Because either of these two incidents could have caused the Great Plateau to form, and there is no evidence to suggest one is more likely than the other, we are left with three possible theories. Theory number 1, the Fallen Hero theory. After the events of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, the minions of Ganon find a way to resurrect him, though not in the way they had initially hoped to do by pouring Link's blood over Ganon's ashes. Ganon is revived in the form of Calamity Ganon, who ravages the land of Hyrule, slowly gaining power. Ganon tries to take over Hyrule Castle, only to be lured into a trap and sealed in the castle by the sages. A new Link was not able to defeat Calamity Ganon for unknown reasons, and was put into a deep sleep, probably with a wish from a united Triforce, only to be awakened if it looked like Ganon would be able to escape Hyrule Castle and destroy the world. Theory number 2, the Child Link theory. After the events of Four Swords Adventures, Ganon somehow escaped being sealed in the Four Sword, this is pure speculation, probably by transforming into a cloud of darkness similar to the way he did in Twilight Princess. Without a physical form, it might take Ganon time to regain his full power. Ganon tries to take over Hyrule Castle, only to be lured into a trap and sealed in the castle by the sages. A new Link was not able to defeat Calamity Ganon and was put into a deep sleep. He only has the Triforce of Courage at this point, only to be awakened if it looked like Ganon would be able to escape Hyrule Castle and destroy the world. Theory number 3, the Adult Link theory. This is probably the most plausible of the three theories, and the one I stand by as the most likely theory. After the events of Spirit Tracks, the Great Sea finally recedes, creating the Great Plateau and revealing the old Hyrule that was underwater for so long. Hyrule is rebuilt and becomes a thriving kingdom. A new Link comes across the Master Sword lodged in a stone which was Ganondorf from Wind Waker. This explains why the Master Sword is rusted, being under the Great Sea for so long. Since the chosen hero is said to be the only one who can wield the Master Sword, Link removes the sword from the stone and unknowingly releases and revives Ganondorf. Ganondorf takes the form of Calamity Ganon until his full power returns and tries to take over Hyrule Castle, only to be lured into a trap and sealed in the castle by the sages. The new Link was not able to defeat Calamity Ganon, was put into a deep sleep. Link does not have the Triforce of Courage at this point, only to be awakened if it looked like Ganon would be able to escape Hyrule Castle and destroy the world. Before he was put to sleep, Link placed the Master Sword in a pedestal at a location which he forgot after being asleep for so long. He must remember where he hid the Master Sword and find it to defeat Calamity Ganon. And there you have it, three theories that are plausible as to the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild's position on the Zelda timeline. The only question left to answer is, which theory do you think is the right one? Or maybe you have a theory of your own. If so, please voice it in the comments section below. Also, feel free to check out the TimPlaysAGame forum, link in the description, for a full transcript of this video. Also, check out the forum so we can discuss all things Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I'm Tim from TimPlaysAGame, signing out, and good night.